Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how we use the analog console to get things done. Matthew and Josh Samson from Cape Town, South Africa have let us use their music. I'm a huge fan. These guys are great songwriters, great performers. They just have wonderful, wonderful music, and we've used their music on many of the videos we've made. Come on in the room, I'll show you what we do and how we get started. Welcome to the lair. So, the very first thing that I want to do is listen to the song top to bottom, and the most forefront thing in the first step, which is to listen top to bottom, is to check the dynamic range of the music, the levels from the choruses to the verses, really see how the song grows, and then from there I'll start to think about what I can bring to the table to let that song bloom more and take it over the finish line from there. So let's check it out. Let's take a listen, top to bottom.
In her walk, sex is in her eyes, her perfume leaves a trail, 'cause she's the devil in disguise, devil in disguise.
Great song. I really connected to the music. So this is ultimately what you want to look for, is at the end of the day, you want to give something back to the artist that they can then serve to their fans, and it should sound like we were never there. You should have the listener connect with the music. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to see how that equation works before I even start anything. And in this case, the song's pretty linear, but it's got some real dynamic range to it as well. So I want to bloom it out. There's no surgical maneuvers to make. I don't have to go and rescue anything. What I want to do is a vibe play, and I want to use the analog console to bring that vibe, let that thing bloom, and really pay attention to that dynamic range and make sure that those verses don't outweigh those choruses, that kind of thing. So the first order of business is in that mid-range where that music lives, the melodic structure of this music. Does your ear go there? And in this case, on the mix, it does. On the low frequencies, on the low end of this mix, I would like to treat it a little bit and make it a little more punchy and maybe take away some of that low, swooping, swampy low end, because I don't want the ear to go there. I want the ear to really connect with the melodic structure of the music. Just, nice, punchy, tight low end. And as I was listening to the song, I was coming up with some ideas behind that. So many times on videos and in speaking panels, I've talked about our chain, and one of my go-to elements of magic that I like to bring is saturate the music in the beginning with the tube equalizer, and then I've got a few other things that I put within the chain, and then at the end get that de-esser on there so that whatever I crack open with that tube saturation, I can push down with the de-esser, using it as a high frequency limiter, and that way, once I get that on each end of the chain, I can put all kinds of other things within the chain and play around and get creative and let that music bloom and go for the vibe, not for any surgical maneuvers or anything like that. So the first thing I like to do is make sure that the only tube element in the chain is this EAR tube equalizer in the front. Everything else will be solid state, so I'm going to make sure on my patch bay that is the case. So I see from my previous session that the tube limiter is in the chain. I'm going to take that out, and we have an XLR patch bay here because we find that makes the cleanest signal without any degradation. So I've patched that out. I know my patch bay, so I know what it is. Right now, this is the way I'm going to start. Tube equalizer. From there, it's going to go into a solid state equalizer. And usually I will use that to tweak the low end and get it punchy And another one of my go-tos that I learned in my early days is to add a little bit at 40, cut a little bit at 30. You know, those frequencies will vary depending on the song and the music, but there's kind of a low-end shelf that I can work with there that is broad in scope, but when you add and subtract, you can create some tightness to it, and that works really, really well a lot of times on this kind of music. So I'm going to try it, and we'll see where it goes. From there, I'm going into a solid-state limiter and a de-esser. So I'm actually putting the solid-state limiter at the end. Even though I talked about the de-esser, I'm actually putting that at the end of the chain. So we'll see how that goes, and maybe we'll change that as we go. But this is going to be the starting point, and I'm going to start listening to the music and see how it feels and what I can bring to the table. So here goes.
She stole her wings, 'cause she's a thief. The angel she stole from was filled with lustful deceit. Yeah, and she don't care. She walks where your fears dare. If you ain't quick, she'll take from you. Ain't just one thing she's got to do. Her red eyes are set on a price, 'cause she's the devil in disguise. Devil in disguise. Devil in disguise. She's the devil in disguise. She's the devil in disguise.
Okay, so one of the things I'd like to do in the song is I would like to come into the console at a given gain structure, and then as it hits the high parts, actually increase the gain, which I do through the left and right 1 dB stepped attenuators on my analog console. But you can do this in the digital world too by clip gaining it and maybe automating the clip gains. Various ways to do it in a DAW. But what it allows me is to hit a compressor a little harder during the parts that are supposed to be louder. But if you're not careful, you could actually close them down by doing that. So you might also want to automate some EQ to go along with that. And you'll see in the analog domain how I'm going to do that, and I'll show you right now. As the low part of the song, which you can see visually, the dynamic range, moves along, I'm going to be at a given gain structure, and as I cruise into this high part, I'm going to bring up the gain, and I'm going to actually open it up at 3K and 6K a little bit, just to keep everything bloomed and blossomed and making it sound like I was never there, if that makes any sense. So here, check it out. I'll show you what I mean.
Seduction's in her walk, sex is in her eyes. Her perfume leaves a trail, 'cause she's the devil in disguise. Devil in disguise. She stole her wings.
So what that accomplishes in the analog domain is that as the song gets low again, the compressor will open up and it'll leave the output level too loud. So I want to follow the music. I want to follow the dynamic of the music with the input and output of what's happening in the compressor. It's a little more difficult to do it in the digital domain because I've got gain, analog gain with analog circuitry, amplification process, and recovery amps in each of these pieces of analog equipment. In the digital domain, they're in a simulation of the analog gear, so the gain structure is going to work a little bit differently. But essentially what you're doing is you're following the gain of the music, you're following the dynamic range of the music with what you send in and out of the compressor. So as the music blooms and gets bigger, your compressor will also do the same. If you feed into it and add to it as it's going, and making sure to come out of it with that dynamic range. And if you want to do some further work from that, you can do some automated clip gain, stuff like that. Just using your ear, using your emotional connection to that music, and making sure that music grows and tells the story that the songwriter intended. So I hope these tips are helpful. This is what I'm doing with the music, and I inspire you to check it out on the streaming platforms out there, see how you feel about it, see how you connect now that you've got a little inside look at how it ended up where it did.